Hello everyone, it's Vivi and welcome back. First thing I want to get out of the way, does Sly's father even have a name? Well, yes. What I mean by this, Sly's father's name was never mentioned in the games. His name was actually brought up in the collection's official strategy guide, published back in 2010. Now in this guide, he's referred to as Connor Cooper. That's pretty much it. That's how we found out about his name in the first place. I've brought up the name Connor a lot over the years, so for those who are especially new here, I thought it'd be important to at least mention the source or origin of his name. Over the years, I've probably brushed over Dr. M's statement regarding Sly's father. I've brought it up, sure. But there's still that big why question, and that alone I feel could bring something very worthwhile to Sly's story. Before I dive deeper, let me play this one cutscene which I'm referring to.
You might be right. He risked his life to defend you.
I'd do the same for him.
Funny, your father was never such a good friend.
A couple things happening here. First, that one line of his which really stood out. Funny. Your father was never such a good friend. This was a direct response to Sly stating how he'd do the same for Bentley, to defend him. Dr. M did say that Bentley risked his life to defend Sly. He's most likely referring to his previous encounter with Bentley. We'll get to that scene shortly because I feel it's an important one. Notice how your father was never such a good friend line being brought up after Sly's comment about defending Bentley. I thought it'd be something worth considering. Dr. M acknowledging the fact that Bentley risked his life to defend his own friend. I mean, if we connect the dots here, perhaps we have a hint as to what may have happened between Dr. M and Connor Cooper. Before we talk about that hint, there's a second thing to take into account when looking at this scene. You perhaps noticed the complete tone shift in Dr. M's voice. He went from anger, resentfulness towards Sly, to mere acknowledgement and being more grounded. But hey, it didn't take him long to completely revert back to being angry, saying things like, "Coopers are a bunch of dirty, attention-grubbing thieves. All of you." These words, combined with "your father was never such a good friend," could hint at Sly's father not being who he thought he was. Connor could have been someone who would only think for himself. So much, in fact, that it perhaps led to betrayal, not even batting an eye or taking into consideration Dr. M's feelings in this case. One might perhaps imagine a more life-threatening sort of situation, Dr. M being in trouble and Connor leaving him behind. There's only so much we can speculate though. But if this really were about a life-threatening situation, I feel this would have been more hinted at here. It's just the way Dr. M shared his feelings towards the Coopers. It screams more of betrayal, ultimately. If anything, attention-grubbing in his statement could simply mean that Connor would always steal the spotlight, not acknowledging Dr. M, taking the credit, using Dr. M as a tool. There's another scene with Bentley prior to this one which we cannot ignore, and could perhaps reinforce the idea of betrayal. He explained that he knows the pain Bentley suffers working under his inferior. Dr. M seemed to be referring to what they both have in common when saying inferior. You know, them being the brains of the gang. But there's more to it. What keeps the Cooper gang together? Bentley explained brotherhood. Dr. M refused to believe in that sort of thing. He told Bentley that Sly simply wants him to think that. A tool to keep him in line. Dr. M thinking that Bentley's a tool to Sly, well, that right there could be from his own personal experience from the past. If we take a look at Sly comic issue number 2, there's mention of Connor's gang, how things went awry at a point. For those curious, these comics were published in 2004 and 2005, with the former taking place between the ending of Sly 1 and the start of Sly 2, the latter between the end of Sly 2 and the start of Sly 3. On page 9 of comic issue 2, we have Mick Sweeney, the muscle of Connor's gang. He states that the team decided to lay low when things got a little tense. Let things cool down. Things getting tense could potentially involve Dr. M. Connor wasn't such a good friend, plus, things going tense for the gang? If we were to imagine what happened, it's possible that Dr. M had involvement. If not for Dr. M, then perhaps this simply had to do with Interpol, almost getting caught, that sort of situation. It could honestly be anything, but if the team laying low was a result of Dr. M's feud with Connor, let's say, I think that would be one interesting story element worth exploring in the future. Especially if Sly were to ever stumble on his father. He is still in Egypt after all. Going forward in time could perhaps lead Sly to his father. Speaking of which, I made a video I believe 2 years ago, going over a couple of what-if scenarios. If you're curious about that one, I'll leave a link in the description below. If Connor isn't who we think he is, I believe that'd be a nice refresher for the series. Now by that I mean, the Sly series has always established the Cooper legacy having this moral code. That image given to us by Sly himself. However, if Sly were to discover a deep, dark secret or truth about his father, well, that would surely make his world crumble to a certain extent. If Connor isn't who Sly thinks he is, if that were truly the case, then why would McSweeney keep the truth from Sly? If, say, we were to make a guess, perhaps it'd be out of fear. McSweeney fearing the possibility of Sly starting to question his own legacy after finding out that sort of information. So, with that said and done, what do you think happened between Dr. M and Connor? Do you think Dr. M is just spewing false remarks about Connor? What do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. It truly means a lot. I appreciate it. And for all of you viewers out there, thank you so much for always tuning in. I have been Vivi, and until next time.